So in today's episode, we're having our amazing worship leader Josiah with us. He's one of our good friends, one of the B-side core leaders, and he's been doing worship with us for a few months now. And we really wanted to have him come up on the episode to share his testimony, share his heart, share what God did in his life, through his life, and how that impacted the people around him. So Josiah, if you want, you can go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're from,
your background.
Go ahead. Yeah, your background.
Hey guys, my name's Josiah Aponte. Super excited to be able to share my journey with the Lord. I'm mostly from Florida. I spent some time, about 4 years total, in Kansas City. Came back to Florida.
Did you go to IHOP there, or?
Yeah, I was part of the International House of Prayer there. And
what year?
Well, I went growing up like my whole life to the different like teen camps and stuff. So first time I went was probably like maybe 2010, 2011, something like that.
In that range.
And then basically every summer after that, all the way up until I moved there in 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. And then moved back there, moved away for good in 2017.
Okay.
So
wow.
So that's really a lot of moving back and forth. I only moved once. That's from Ukraine to Northport, and I've been stuck here ever since then. But I want to go back to before we get to where you encounter the Lord. I want you to just say what happened in your teenage years. How did you grow up? Where did your fall off happen? What was happening there?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I even get started, I just want to say that if I could like summarize like in maybe just like a phrase of like the theme of my journey with the Lord and like the testimony that God has given me, is I would say that it shows how far he's really willing to go to forgive you.
Wow.
Dude, I would say that it just highlights his redemption, his forgiveness, his mercy. And no matter how far gone you might think you are, no matter how many times you feel like you maybe have turned away from the Lord, that he's actually so willing to accept you back. And
preach it, bro.
Yeah.
It's actually really powerful.
That's really awesome.
So
what happened? What just tell us about your childhood. Did you know the Lord when you were younger?
Yeah. Well, I'll explain a little bit of my parents' background too, because it all kind of ties in. So both my parents actually grew up in unchristian homes, completely like opposite spectrums. My dad grew up in like the ghetto of Puerto Rico. My mom grew up like in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, just like completely opposites. My mom ended up coming actually to Venice, believe it or not, on spring break right after she finished high school. It was supposed to be like a party trip, like with her friends. She came down here and she ended up running into some people that shared the gospel with her. And she ended up going to their church, getting saved, going back home to Wisconsin, telling everybody about how she had fallen in love with Jesus, how amazing he is. Her parents thought she was crazy. She was just, they're like, what kind of drugs were you on down at that trip? Like, this is not good. And they were like super against it, but she was like, no, this is it. Like, God is so good. Like, wow. I'm so ready to go after Jesus. And so from that moment, she was just like a little fireball. And my dad had immigrated from Puerto Rico to Orlando when he was 17. And
dang, that's early.
Yeah. And so he like didn't even speak English at all. He finished high school like barely knowing English. Kind of his family was just like, doing their best to make it. Yeah. His dad ended up starting like a real estate company where he helped rent properties. And my mom's dad got a job offer in Florida, and they ended up actually renting one of the houses from my dad's dad. Mm-hmm. And so they moved into one of the houses, and my dad actually went over to do like a little maintenance thing, and he like saw my mom there, and she was, they started talking, and she was like, hey, you should come to like this young adults thing that I'm a part of. At the time, she was going to a church called Church in the Sun.
That's crazy.
I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's I don't know if you've ever been to any of the One Thing Orlando's.
Yes, I've heard about them.
The church that they do it at is Church in the Sun.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so she got plugged into that young adult group when she moved down to Florida. So then he starts going. They all get, they get kind of plugged into the young adults group. They're all going after the Lord together with their little group of friends. They end up getting married. And
funny thing is, what's it called? I don't even know that much about my parents, and this man's like detailed, like everything. I love it.
I just think it's their story is just so amazing because they get married. They're like so on fire, and the Lord puts it in their hearts to go after missions and go to the missions field. They want to be like full-time missionaries. And at the time when my parents got married, my dad actually didn't even have a job, which is crazy to me. I can't believe that.
And he's a doctor right now.
Yeah, he is.
So it's wow.
And so they had my oldest brother, my oldest sister. They had been living in Orlando for a couple of years. My dad had ended up getting a job as a janitor at the hospital. And story goes that one day he's sweeping up one of the exam rooms or, one of the hospital rooms. And he said that the Lord spoke to him and said that I want you to go to medical school, become a doctor, and you're going to use that to go to the missions field.
Wow.
And my dad is like, okay, I'll do it. So he went back to school, started studying, got all the credentials that he needed. He decided to apply for medical school in Costa Rica because Spanish is his first language. And everything transfers to the U.S. It was cheaper. Like, it was just all around better for him. And it was a chance for them to kind of do missions as well as he was going to school.
In Costa Rica.
Yeah. So they picked up their whole family. He got accepted to medical school, moved to a third world country. My mom has no idea what's going on. She's like from Wisconsin, no like idea about Spanish at all, but she just immediately like gets a heart for the people there.
I love it.
She like becomes fluent in Spanish. She starts teaching at like a little school there, and basically she would always like try to incorporate Jesus into everything. She would like talk to the kids about Jesus after school, and there's actually amazing testimonies of people that are following the Lord to this day that were part of that like little elementary school because of like the things that she sowed there.
Faithfulness right there.
And so in the midst of all this stuff, here I am, boom, born Costa Rica. My parents are just doing their thing. 2 months after I'm born, my dad graduates from medical school. We moved back to the US and we moved around a little bit to a couple different states. I think it was like Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan for residency, and then back to Florida. That's pretty much where my memories start. I was like 6 years old, moving to Florida. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on. We moved to Florida. We get plugged into, we moved to a town called Port St. Lucie. It's like a couple hours away from here. And we get plugged into a church there. My parents you do every opportunity they can to do missions. So they're constantly like taking us to like Guatemala. We're like hiking through the mountains trying to reach like unreached people groups.
Wow.
And
how old were you at this time?
Like 6, 7, 8 years old. I'm like riding on a donkey through the woods for like weeks at a time.
Wow.
Like going to these like unreached people groups that like they speak like their own language.
Come on.
And I mean, there's just crazy stories about that I could go into. I mean, of just like villages getting saved, like miracles, like all this crazy stuff. This is like
my question is how do you talk to people who have their own set of language?
You have to do a double translator. So we had a translator from their language to Spanish and then Spanish to English.
Wow. Dude. Talk about a telephone game.
See, what's his name? Goodness, the guy who just moved to China.
Francis Chan?
Yeah, Francis Chan. I just phrased that down. But he was saying like how his last missionary trip before he fully got devoted to moving away from America, he said he came into a hut and they're walking hut to hut to hut, and these people that speak their own language, and he has like 2 translators, and he walks in and people like get phase, like, whoa, there's something else. There's a God that, like, he cares for me. And like these people that have just like this faith that just comes out of nowhere because they have nothing else. They only have that. And so he's just like, that's what got me like hooked. And he's like, how could I even go back to America where we have everything and we don't even pay attention to God, where these guys have nothing and all they do is pay attention to God? It's just so beautiful. So like my thing is like, how would you ever explain to somebody that one, you know, how like that Jesus loves them, that Jesus died for them, and they don't even know a single glimpse? Like we usually talk to people who know something about Christianity. These people have nothing, zero, zip, nada. That's just
funny
insane.
how you actually. All right, now I have to go into the story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because
I love it.
I'll make it quick, but this is actually exactly how we got to them, because we reached this village. We were hiking for literally 2 weeks to get to them.
Wow.
Like we'd walk all day, camp, wake up the next day, keep walking, mountain after mountain in Guatemala to get to these people. And we finally get to them. They're like living in like mud huts that every time it rains they have to like rebuild them, like totally like savage people. And we're there a couple of days. We have like our super modern like American tents and stuff, and they're like, what the heck is this, you know? You know, we have like all of our little air mattresses and amenities, and they're like freaking out. And basically their little chief, like they had like a little organization, like I don't know, like it wasn't like one leader, it was like a group of them where like the leaders of the village, you know, it was like a little
chief circle,
yeah. And so they had a little meeting and they decided that they didn't like us and that they wanted to get rid of us. They had this whole like plan how they were going to literally like murder us in the middle of the night, like burn our tents, like all this stuff. Somebody had actually overheard the meeting and relayed the message to us, and they're like, you guys got to get like everybody out of here, like load the women and children up. We had one Jeep that we had brought with us that carried all the luggage, and they're like, load all the women and children on the Jeep and get out of here, like this is about to get crazy. And literally in the midst of all they're having that meeting, this baby is being born in one of the things, and my dad goes in there to like help them deliver the baby, and the baby's born with a cleft lip. I don't know if you know. You know what that is.
I know what that is. Yeah.
And so they see the baby, they're like, oh, it's broken, and they were literally just gonna throw it out into the mud.
It's broken.
Let it die. Like they're like, well, they know like it can't eat, so there's nothing we can do. And my mom like freaks out. She's like, no, like we can do this. Like there's surgeries, like there's things. They're like, what are you talking about? So long story short, my mom takes the baby with us when we flee the village. We take it to the city, to the capital. We give it to an orphanage. They get it like surgery and stuff. We leave, go back to the US, come back like a few months later. The baby like got through all the surgeries. Everything is good. We make our way back to the village. We talk to the people. We're like, hey, the baby is fixed, like it's better now, here's the picture. The chief guy comes out, he's like, I don't know about this. You know, the father of the baby comes, he's like, okay, this is not my son, like you guys did some kind of weird witchcraft thing or trying to trick us. And we're like, come like with us back to the main city to see the baby yourself, and you can bring him back here yourself. So he comes with us, and he brings his oldest son, who's like a teenager. And they were like totally like blown away when they like, saw the city, the cars. We like took them to like this like KFC type thing, and they're like eating the fried chicken, like freaking out. They start like they're just like throwing the bones and stuff.
Oh
like,
wow, like full on savage style.
Yeah, like they started like literally like peeing in the middle of the restaurant on the floor. We're
what?
Like, no, like you can't do that. And we like take them to the bathroom and like show them how to use the toilet, and they're just laughing. They're like, what the heck is this? So they're like totally like this is like a whole new universe for them.
That is nuts.
So we take them, see the baby. He's like in shock. He's like, what in the world? And so we take the baby back to the village. He shows the baby to the village. Everybody's like freaking out. And then that guy like starts breaking down crying, and he turns to my parents and he was like, I was the one that came to the people with the idea that I wanted to kill you guys, and you guys saved my son.
Wow.
And he's like, whatever God you're serving, that's the God we're going to serve.
Wow.
And so basically, like, the missionaries that brought us there ended up like following up with them. They built like a cement church there. Like, they like had a full-time pastor there, like discipling people. And to this day, the village is still going hard.
Wow.
And
that's faithfulness right there, bro. Like, just your parents pioneering, I guess you could say, through all that. And we're actually going to be talking about that pioneering topic with Masha, you and Greg in a future episode on a deep talk. But so continuing on with your testimony of your families and your adventures, to some degree it sounds like an adventure. I mean, dude, like, I'm just imagining you being like 6 years old, like just strapped on into like some kind of car seat, makeshift on a donkey, and just like going through the mountains.
We didn't even have a car seat. I was just up there just wobbling.
Just wobble.
But yeah, I mean, so these are the type of things I like grew up, 7, 8, 9 years old, going on these kinds of trips, like seeing these things, the works of God. And then when I was 9 years old, my parents decided to go on a journey where they started, they had become really passionate about ending of abortion, things like that. And the Lord actually put on their heart to adopt. And they said, God, if we're going to adopt, we're not going to like go out and look for a kid to adopt. Like, you bring us the kid, we'll adopt it, And so through a series of events, this lady came, and she had so many abortions in the past that she was like, I can't do it anymore. She's like, would you please take my baby? And my parents were like shocked. They're like, what the heck? Like, God actually like provided a baby. Like, we were kind of like low-key joking. But
low-key joking.
Like, it was like one of those things.
I love
like,
the honesty,
though.
I love the honesty. That's like the straight upness. Like, Lord, that happens so often though. Like, you're like, Lord, if you just do this one thing for me, I'll do this and this. And then the Lord does it, and you're like, oh, snap. So I actually have to do it now. Yeah.
And so it wasn't that they were joking, but they were like, there's no way it's going to really happen. Like, who's going to come and offer us their baby, So that happens. We ended up adopting my little sister. Her name's Isabella. She's amazing. Completely transformed my family. And then we adopted 2 more kids after that, Micah and Israel. And because of all those adoption processes and things like that, they had really like slowed down on the missions, and
became more family oriented.
More family, they wanted to go deeper into our local community. And the church that we were going to, they just felt like wasn't really going as hard after God as they wanted to go. So they actually wanted to get reconnected back to their church in Orlando, which was like 2 hours away at the time. And so we started driving 2 hours every Sunday to go to service there. Every Wednesday night we would go so that we could go to youth group there. And we got plugged in there. And after going there for about a year, my oldest brother started, they were like talking about this thing that they were starting up called Resound. It was like an internship kind of intensive thing. And so he went into that. And funny enough, so did Daniel Moronichenko.
Wow.
Some of these people that are going super hard in Orlando, they all did that internship together.
Dude, that's amazing.
That's awesome. And
small world.
Yeah, it is. And so I actually grew up like, I remember like being like 10, 11 years old, like hanging out with like all these Resound people. They're like very, very similar to Beachside, like, worship nights, like going hard, really, really like trying to hit evangelism, trying to hit all these things, like just young, passionate, adults that are like going hard. And I remember going to one of their prayer nights, and I was like 11 years old, and I'm like, there's something different like going on here than there is at like when I go to church or when I go to youth group. Like these people like are talking about like knowing God and stuff, and like this is like different. I don't know. And so that's when I like really like gave my life to the Lord. I was like, Lord, I want to like live for you. I want to do this. And so from there, I just continued to like be around those type of people. Eventually, Resound like broke off from Church on the Sun and became like its own church, its own ministry and everything. And through that, we ended up hearing about like The Call with Lou Engle.
Oh. Wow.
We ended up here and going to some of those.
Oh.
We ended up hearing about IHOP KC, visiting One Thing Conference. When I was 13, my parents like shipped me to the summer camp there at IHOP KC, and I spent like my whole summer there. And
no wonder you're such a good worshiper, bro. Like this man grew up in like the whole worship community and everything.
Yeah. And so then I came back after my first summer at IHOP KC. I was like excited. I was like ready to go. I was just hungry for God. And my family had heard about a small little local house of prayer that was only like 30 minutes from us called Open Door House of Prayer. So we go there for like one of their prayer nights. We like it. We keep going a couple of times. I start like inviting some of my friends to go. And one night I walk into the prayer set thing. I'm sitting in the back. At this point in my life, never once ever thought about doing anything with music, never cared about it, never even crossed my mind. And this lady, she's like the sweetest, like old black lady. She just like looks at me and she's like, God has anointed you to be a singer, to be a worshiper. And I just see it all over you. And I'm like sitting in the back of the room. I'm like, no. Like, that's not me at all.
Wrong person.
And she's like, no, it's all over you. You're going to get up here and you're going to sing for worship today. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, I'm not doing that. She's like, you better get up here, boy. I'm like, all right.
Get up here, boy. Come here.
So I'm like, all right.
That sass right there.
So I go up there. I'm like, la, 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 like going it. And then afterwards, she's like, all right, I'll see you again next week. I'm like, next week? No, this is like a one-time thing. She's like, no, we're going to train you up in the gifting that the Lord's called you to.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, whatever, I guess I'm doing this. So I would come, sing on the worship team, did that. One of the guys there started teaching me like a little bit of guitar chords, and the Lord put it on my heart at like 14 to go there and do my own like devotional set. So I would go at like 6 a.m. Nobody's there. Just sit there, me and the Lord on the guitar for like 2 hours. And I did that for a while and just had like, honestly, just such a sweet time with the Lord. And
how old were you said?
I was 14.
14 at that time. Wow.
And yeah, I would get my mom to bring me there at 6 a.m. She would drop me off. I'd open up everything, turn everything on, and just worship for 2 hours. She would pick me up, bring me home.
Dude.
And
that's beautiful.
I would, do other little sets throughout the week there as well. And it was just a really awesome time in my life where I was really like growing. And then, so that next summer had come up. I'm excited to go back to IHOP KC. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do the music intensive this time. Everything's going to be great. And I get there and it was like immediately I had like just got plugged into the worst like friend group, all the bad kids, like everybody's like doing all this sketchy stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like these kids are cool. Like, like I want to do this stuff, like the enemy was just totally trying to like deter me from what the Lord wanted me to do. So basically that whole summer I ended up just like screwing around, like just didn't do, and like skipping all the services, just messing around, like being dumb
horsing
kids.
Around and just
vandalizing random little things because we thought it's cool or whatever, And so I go back home after that summer, and all of my friends that I had made that were like, that I had like been inviting to the house of prayer and stuff, they were all like, over it too. And they're like, yeah, like we're all doing bad stuff now too. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So basically I kind of went down this kind of like teenage rebellious stage.
Right.
Yeah.
For around the age of like 15ish, you know, started literally just like going from like 0 to like 100, you know, not quite 100, but yeah,
getting there.
So yeah, I mean, one of my friends introduced me to weed. We're like smoking weed all the time, drinking, you know, sneaking around, and basically in just confusion and immaturity and just dumbness, I had kind of developed this theology in my head that like as long as I was doing like going to enough prayer services and enough like ministry things, that it would just balance out whatever the bad stuff I was doing. So I was like, so I can pretty much just do both. I can do whatever I want. I can be bad on these days as long as I make it up at the prayer set, you know.
As long as the scales you're saying outweigh each other.
Yeah, that's actually how I thought. And I was like, this is cool. Like, I'm going to do this. And so I would literally like go and like get high and then come straight to the worship set and like lead worship. And I'm like, looking back now, I'm like, I can't believe I actually did this stuff. But yeah, it was really bad. But that was how the enemy just slowly starts, you know, trickling these little thoughts in.
Right.
And without proper discipleship, that's how like you can just go on these crazy things, dude.
Stray from the truth and just get into a distorted truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And so over that next year, my parents started noticing like something was weird with me. They didn't really know what it was, but they knew something was off. And a little bit before that, maybe like a year before all this stuff started happening, my older sister had moved to IHOP KC. She was doing night watch. She was doing, which is like, for all of you to know what night watch is, it's basically
24-hour prayer overnight.
Yeah, it's basically you are in the prayer room, like in like a worship prayer setting for 6 hours from midnight until 6 a.m. And you do
every
that
day?
Every single day. And after that, you go to class and then you sleep and you do it all over again.
Awesome.
And you go to like Bible classes.
That's harsh.
Yeah.
That's harsh.
So she had been doing that for about a year.
So I just wanted to ask you this question because during those moments that you were going back and forth doing all these things, did you ever feel like all of a sudden there was like a knocking and like, hey, I'm doing this completely wrong? And then just like you were like, oh no, it's fine, and you kept going to your own thing? Or did you just continue doing with your own theology that you've instilled in yourself? Really didn't care about anything else that was going on?
And to add to what he said also, did anybody notice a difference in you? Like the people who, you know, you were close with or that were like encouraging you into like worship or whatever, or even your parents? Because I mean, from what it sounds like, your parents were really close with the Lord. Like, I mean, full on head forward type of people.
I think people around me definitely started to notice. People at the house of prayer started like noticing, like, dude, like your eyes are red, like what's going on? And I'm like, nothing, dude. You know, like I would like come up with these bogus stories, and like I think people were starting to notice like things were weird, and I isolated myself to like hide from it, you know, because I was like, oh, they don't understand, like, you know, like I know better than them, like I can just make it up later with God, you know. And so I was basically just feeding lies to myself.
Right.
And so that's kind of what led into everything. Was my parents started noticing I was acting weird, and they're like, maybe we need to get him like immersed in a different atmosphere or something. And so they came up with this idea. They're like, hey, how would you feel about moving in with your sister in Kansas City, and you can finish high school there? There's like a bunch of really awesome Christian schools that are like kind of associated with IHOP and stuff, and like you can go to one of those, you can live with your sister, you know, it's gonna be great. You can be a part of like the youth group worship there and like continue to grow in worship. And I immediately, like, the first thing I thought was like, dude, this is gonna be sick. Like I have all my bad friends there. Like, my sister's going to be gone all night at night watch. Like, I can do whatever I want, you know? Like, I don't have to worry about my parents. Like, this is going to be sick, you know? So I was like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I want to go get closer to God. And totally scheming, totally just being a little evil kid. And so I moved there, 16 years old, and just started going super hard into, like, you know, smoking weed, doing everything bad I could do. I would literally, like, my sister would leave to go to night watch, and I'd be like, all right, coast is clear. And, like, a bunch of people would be, like, flooding my basement. Like, we're all, like, down there smoking weed, partying, like, having a little shindig. And then, you know, I kick everybody out, go to sleep, wake up, nobody knew. And that went on for a little while. And then eventually, obviously, you can only keep that kind of stuff up for so long.
Right.
My sister started catching on. She told my parents what happened, and everything, like, blew up. My parents, like, freaked out. My mom's like, I'm coming to live there over the summer with you guys. Your dad's going to travel back and forth. We got to keep an eye on you. And I'm like, great. Like, this is going to suck, you know? And so basically my mom gets there. Well, both my parents came. They have, like, this serious talk with me. They're like, look, you've been living this life for, like, over a year. Like, you got to get your life together. Like, this is serious, you know? And I'm like, blah, blah, you know, whatever. And they're like, well, you know, you're definitely not allowed to hang out with any of these people anymore. Like, we're putting you on lockdown. Like, you're grounded. Like, we're not giving you rides. You're not getting picked up by anybody and all this. And I'm like, all right. They're like, the only thing you can do is you can go to the youth group and you can do worship at the youth group if you want. And that's it. So I'm like, all right, fine.
How old were you then? Like 16?
I was 16. No, yeah, I was 16. This was like... yeah, I think I was still 16. And so basically what happened was I started getting plugged into the youth group and kind of started getting some discipleship from the youth group, from some of the youth leaders. The youth pastor at the time was this guy named Isaac Bennett, super awesome guy. And I started getting onto, like, the youth worship team and kind of getting some better friends, getting around some better people. And I ended up doing, like, this summer, like, intensive where I really, like, encountered God in, like, a super powerful way. I remember that was like, this was like the summer. So I turned 16. My birthday's in December 30th. And so I turned 16, and then that summer I did the intensive. Really encountered God. We had, like, such an awesome time of just going hard after the Lord with, like, a group of teenagers for the summer. And I remember that was one of the first times that was the first time I really, like, got drunk in the spirit. I was, like, laid out on the floor, like, felt something that I had never felt before. And I remember somebody coming up to me and they were like, once you, like, experience something like this, it takes away so much doubt of, like, if God is real or not. And they're like, now you're never going to be able to live, like, the same. And I was like, well, this is crazy. So basically that summer ended. I had been on a good track and I had made all these amazing friends over the summer, and everyone was like, yeah, we're all going to be best friends. We're all going to go hard after God together once this is over. And basically I got out of that, went back to school, was kind of doing my thing. And, like, 3 months go by and I literally did not hear a word from anybody. I was, like, super lonely. I was like, this sucks. Like, I don't have any friends. Like, everybody, like, ditched me. And of course, here comes calling my old friends. Ring, ring. They're like, hey, man, we haven't seen you in forever, dude. You got to come hang out with us again. And I'm like, all right, but dude, I'm going after God now. Like, I'm going super hard after Jesus. I'm not going to be doing any of that. I'm not smoking weed. I'm not doing any of that stuff. They're like, no way, dude. Like, we would never do that. Like, we're just want to hang out with you. Of course, first thing I do when I go to hang out with them, smoke weed, do all this bad stuff. I'm like, dang it, dude. So then my parents find out that I went to hang out with them. They were super pissed. They're like, you're grounded. Like, you're not going to do this stuff. We're not going to, like, let you fall back into that again and ruin your life. And I was like not having it. I was like, I guess, I don't know. Honestly, I really think it was like a spiritual thing that came over me, but it was just like this deep like anger, and like I was like, no, I'm gonna do whatever I want, blah blah blah. I go into my room and I like start scheming. I'm like, dude, I'm running away tonight, dude. Like I'm gonna do whatever I want. I'm sick of people forcing me to like love God. I'm sick of people forcing me to, go into ministry things. Like it's never been my choice. It's always like people telling me that I need to do this, and I want to make my own decisions in life. So I
completely forgetting the encounter you had just a few months ago.
Yes, exactly. And literally packed up a backpack of stuff, made a little fake like prop in the bed to look like I was sleeping, like
movie style.
Yeah, and climbed out the window. And I remember this moment so clearly of like, I had opened my window, I'm like halfway crawling out the window, and I remember thinking to myself, I like paused and I'm like, is this really what I want to do? I was like, if I climb out this window, it's going to change everything about my life. And I was like, all right, I'm doing it. Boom, went out the window. My friends picked me up. I ran away for like a couple of days. My parents eventually found me because there was only so many places I could go. And they like came to the house. I like go outside, and growing up, I was always extremely respectful to my parents. Never once ever raised my voice at them. Never once ever like talked back to them. Like I was like even though I was like doing bad stuff, I would always honor them. I was always very respectful. And when I saw them, I like had this like demonic anger come over me. I'm like yelling at them, I'm like, I hate you. I've always hated you. Allah. And they were like so shocked. They're like, what is wrong with our son? Like, this is not our son. And they're like crying, weeping, like, what is going on? And my older brother had come and to try to talk to me, and he was like, hey, like, I know you are really angry right now. You don't want to go back to live with mom and dad, but I'm not going to let you like stay with these people because you're going to throw your life away doing drugs and stuff. Like, you got to at least like do something productive with your life. He's like, how about you come move in with me? At this point, he was going to law school at UMKC, so he lived like 30 minutes away from my parents downtown. And he was like, I'll help you like get your GED. You can get at least a productive life going.
Right.
Because I had been kicked out of the school for running away and stuff. And so I was like, fine, that's better than going back to my parents. So I went back to my parents' house, packed up some more of my stuff. It was like a super emotional thing. My mom's like sobbing, crying. I'm like, saying goodbye to my little siblings. I'm like, I'm never going to see you guys again. I'm like crying too, like to go live with my brother. And he drags me to law school every day, which was like the most torturous thing ever. It was so boring. And like he's like forcing me to like sit there, like
you were at his lectures and stuff, or
I would sit like outside of the lectures and like sit there and try to study for my GED.
Right. Okay.
I lived with him for like a few months, and during this time I moved in with my brother. My older sister, the one that was like going super hard at night watch and stuff, she actually had she'd become Lou Engel's personal assistant, and she was like being mentored by him and his wife, and like running with their family. And he had known me too because I went over there a couple times, like hang out with his kids, and like our families like intermingled a little bit through a series of events, and that's another story. But basically she told him what was going on. She's like, my brother is like going through this really hard thing, and he had like a little bit of a soft spot for me because he has a son named Josiah. And so he heard about it. He's like, oh my gosh, like, no, like he's such an amazing kid. Like, I'm going to be praying for him. And then the next day he comes to her and he's like, God told me I'm going to do a 21-day fast for him. And the Lord's going to break into his life, and he's going to come home by his 18th birthday. God told me it's going to happen. We're going to be interceding. We're going to be contending for this. And so she calls me and tells me that I had just moved in with my brother and stuff. And she's like, I'm praying for you. I heard about everything that happened. Lou is praying for you. He's doing a 21-day fast for you. Like, we love you. And I was so pissed. I was like, Lou Engle's doing a 21-day fast for me? I was like, no way, dude. God is actually going to do something now. Like, I don't want this. Leave me alone. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with God. Like, why are you guys so persistent? Like, just get away from me. I was like, this is not cool, dude.
The demons speaking, they're like, flee.
I was like, this is not cool. It was crazy. So, basically, I live with my brother during the time that he's doing this fast. And me and my brother ended up going to Texas on like a little vacation thing around Christmas. We were like staying with a family that he knew there. And we ended up going to church with them. Like one of those like super huge, crazy churches. No, it wasn't Upper Room. It was like Gateway Church or one of those like really big ones.
Yeah.
And we go to it and the pastor was actually talking about like demonic influence and like how it's like, all these different things are like creeping into the younger generation, and it's bringing like a spirit of rebellion against parents, a spirit of all this stuff. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, this sounds really familiar.
Sounds almost exactly to what I'm going through right now.
Yeah, and I literally like got down on my knees and like I was like, God, like I repent, like I know that I messed up. This is like, I don't know why I've been pushing away everybody that's been trying to help me and go after like all these things that are like literally nothing and hurting me and like destroying me.
Listening to, just want to bump in with you speaking about everything here. It honestly is like a modern version of David. Like just like you kind of like jumping in and jumping out, jumping in and jumping in, but ultimately coming back to the Lord. It's just interesting how that, and you're a worshiper too, so like
that is true. That is true.
Well, so what happened? You got down on your knees. You started praying, and did anything happen after that?
And so I had kind of this heaviness in my heart leaving the service, and
heaviness of conviction.
Yeah, that's when conviction actually entered, and so I'm walking around for the next couple of days. I'm like very convicted. I'm like, I don't know. And it was actually the night before my 18th birthday. I'm sitting there and the guy that we were staying with comes to me and he's like, he kind of had known like what was going on in my situation and stuff. And he just sits down with me and he's like, look, you're going to be 18 tomorrow. You're not a kid anymore. You got to start making real decisions. Like, excuse me. You got to man up, like, and take your life seriously. And he just, like, told it to me straight like that and then left. And I was like, wow, that was kind of, he's right. Like, I need to do something. It was just a guy that we were staying with, one of my brother's friends. And so I went up into the room that I was staying in and, like, the Holy Spirit just fell. And I was, like, couldn't stop praying in tongues. I'm, like, going super hard, like, just weeping on the floor, like, open up a Bible that was there on the desk. Like started reading the Bible, like praying in tongues for like a few hours. And it was like super late at night, like almost midnight. It was literally, I think it was 11 p.m. It was like an hour before I turned 18. And the Lord told me to call my parents and to basically like ask for forgiveness for like being disrespectful to them and all these things. And just make things right with them. And so I called them, told everything. I was like, like, I'm sorry. Like, I know what I did was wrong. Like, I'm ready to stop being an idiot. And then they were like, okay, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to come home. And they're like, all right, we're going to buy you a plane ticket. You're coming home tomorrow. And at this point, I had completely forgotten about Lou Engle's prophecy, but spot on my 18th birthday, came home.
Wow.
Right on the day, flew in.
Wow.
And my birthday happens to fall on where the One Thing conference every year in Kansas City. So I flew in. My parents picked me up from the airport, and we drove straight to
the
conference. And I walk in, and I see my old youth pastor coming in. Like, it was the first person I saw. And he's like, Josiah, where have you been? I haven't heard from you in like a year. Like, you just disappeared. Like, stop coming to the youth group. Like, what's going on? I told him everything that happened. I was like, yeah, but I'm good now. Like, I'm going to like rededicate my life to the Lord and everything. And he's like, you need to do the One Thing internship. And I was like, okay. He's like, come on, we're going to go. I'm going to introduce you to the leaders, and we're going to do this. So I went, I grabbed the application, filled it out, applied, got accepted. For those of you that don't know what the One Thing internship is, it's basically 6 months of just going super hard after God, where you spend 6 to 8 hours a day in the prayer room, just like seeking the Lord, reading the Bible. You read through the whole Bible within 6 months. You read like multiple different books of like amazing
those are the people that are usually in the church, like as the upper room is not upper room, as IHOP is worshiping. There's people who are in the crowd. That's the internship people.
A big chunk of them, yeah, are internship people. There's usually, I think they accept up to 100 at a time.
That's really awesome. And so there, Luingo's prophecy from before got fulfilled. You came home, you started doing the One Thing internship. Excuse me. And so what happened next in your life during the internship or after? Like, because the one thing I'm looking to hear about is the continual encounters with the Lord to solidify your foundation with Him. Because a lot of times, like you've had before, you had one encounter and then for months you didn't have anything, you fall apart. One encounter, for months you didn't have anything, you fall apart. And so now, did something else happen that was completely different that solidified this foundation that you had with God?
Well, not yet, believe it or not.
Really?
I'm telling you, it's a modern day David story, bro. It's honestly.
But I will say that gave me a super solid foundation of theology, of the Bible, of testimonies of different believers that have gone through, amazing things. But still, believe it or not, I still had this mentality of like works of like, okay, I now like I've done so many bad things, like this is what's gonna make it up to God, is like sitting in the prayer room for 6 hours a day, sitting in the prayer room for 8 hours a day, like going to all these teachings, going out evangelizing. Like this is like gonna basically make it up. By the end of this, I should be about even, and
to do more bad things. And it should be even, like, just to do some more. Oh, man.
Not necessarily to do some more bad things, but like, to like, it was almost like I like had to like owe God something, And there
atonement. You were kind of like doing like an atonement type thing.
So nobody ever mentioned that like Jesus paid it all. He did it all. Like you didn't have to do anything to satisfy God. Like you don't have to do anything. Like Jesus already did everything. You just have to come and rest. No one ever said that in the middle of it? Or did you just not believe that?
I guess I just didn't really make the connection, because all my whole life everyone's saying like, oh, like, you need to have like a relationship with God. But at the same time, they're like, oh, we need to be going to all these prayer meetings. We need to be doing. So I'm like thinking in my head, relationship with God equals doing things for God.
Well, there's two types of mentalities that happen. One is the person understands it, right? Like, but they don't actually put it into their life. Like it doesn't become personal. And, I knew a lot of stuff growing up, but it only became real to me once I actually went through it, like I've heard forever that God is our Father, Heavenly Father, but it never became real to me until I actually lost my biological father. So and I believe a lot of things are like that in life, where until you can know about it to the T, right? This is like when we talked about how you can have a degree as a pastor, but until you actually, build yourself up in the experience, like, bro, you can just wipe that thing with your behind, honestly, because it means nothing in reality.
Absolutely.
Like knowledge is just knowledge, when you put it into application. That's why the Bible says faith without actions is dead.
Yeah.
So And that sounds like why it wasn't working in you, because it was like you knew about it, but because it didn't like become real in the full sense, it was dead. It wasn't doing the full work that it was supposed to happen.
Yeah. And there was I would say that whole entire season was literally just a huge spiritual battle for my soul, like because I would be like going hard, and then out of nowhere, like people would literally come into like the prayer room and be like, bro, let's go smoke weed, like all this stuff. And it was just like the Lord was like constantly like trying to pull me towards him, and the enemy was like throwing every distraction possible. And for the first half of it, I had gotten in trouble multiple times for doing bad things, and they were literally sat me down and like, look, like we accepted you, we denied tons of other people that wanted to be in your seat. You're not taking this seriously, and we honestly should have kicked you out already a long time ago. And if you have like one more thing, like you're gone. Like like this isn't like a game to like mess around. Like we're trying to like go hard after God here. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. And I was like, dang, you know, like at least I need to finish. Like I need to take this more seriously out of respect for these people, you know? And so I tried to like take it more seriously. And for the last 3 months, the Lord did a lot in me. And I had this whole plan of like, yeah, I'm going to go to, I was like, okay, I need to keep like up with my momentum. Like, I don't want to fall back and doing the bad things. I want to like keep my track record up of doing good things. So I'm going to like go to IHOP U. I'm going to, you know, like start getting on the worship teams. I'm going to start, you know, doing that and get involved in all this stuff. And that was my plan. And so I graduate the internship, and I tell that to my parents, and they're like, there's no way you're doing that. Like you're gonna, like, you need to not be in Kansas City. Like you have too many distractions here, too many like bad influences. Like you're just going to end up doing the same cycle over and over again. Like you need to change something.
Right.
So I was like, all right, maybe you guys are right, but I don't know what I'm going to do. So I moved back to Florida with them. We moved back to Port St. Lucie. I get back plugged in with Open Door House of Prayer. I just kind of start doing some worship sets there again, doing some things, still trying to like basically please God out of my own actions and things.
Right.
And this guy comes to me and invites me to go to the Sarasota House of Prayer to help lead worship for like a teen camp that they were doing. And I was like, sure, I'll go. I go there, do the worship for it. It was awesome. Afterwards, the director of the House of Prayer, his name is Roger Lee, he came to me. He's like, would you want to be our first ever intern here? And we got one other guy doing it. You guys can do it together. I was like, sure. So I do it, and basically it was the same thing all over again. 6 hours in the prayer room, except there was no musicians or anything except for me. So I was playing piano and worshiping for like 6 hours at a time. Literally, I would do 4 hour set, take a 2 hour break, come back for 2 hours.
No, this explains a lot about what's going on, the worships that we did at Daniel's house, where it was worthy is your name, G. We could go on that song for like
hours.
Yeah, I love that song.
Me too, dude. I like after that night, I've been singing that song for like I have it. If you saw it in the living room, it's written out "Worthy is your name, Jesus" on the wall, because it was in my head for weeks.
I love that. And so here I am. I'm like, dude, I'm building so much like credibility with God. This is awesome. I'm like
clocking in so much.
Yeah, like clocking in all these hours, you know. And for like 6 months again, I did that at the Sarasota House of Prayer, like no one else around, just doing that. The other guy quit like a couple weeks in, so it was pretty much just me the whole time doing it by myself. And basically I just ended up getting burnt out, and I was like, okay, I've been doing this Christian thing for like a year straight. I've been going hard, like, and what do I have? Like, I feel horrible on the inside. Like, I'm like, I don't even know, like I'm just broken at this point. Like I don't know what to do anymore. And so I decide that I'm going to take a little break and go back and live with my parents for a little bit. And during that couple of months, it was like maybe 3 months, I like literally did nothing with my life, just sitting around being a hobo, doing nothing. And then I meet these guys who own a recording studio in Nashville, and they were like telling me about it. I was like, dude, that sounds like the coolest job ever. Like, you get to like make music and get paid for it, and like help people like be creative and like come up with things. I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, how do I get involved in that? And they're like, just go to school for it. Like, learn what you got to learn. Like, learn how to use the programs, learn how to, work with sound and stuff, and then try to get an internship or a job doing it or something. So I was like, that's awesome. Short version is I ended up going to a school in Orlando called Full Sail for music production and doing that. And then I kind of made this decision where I was like, well, I did the God thing for a year, got burnt out. I didn't feel it because again, everything was based off me, off my emotions, off everything. Right. It wasn't really working out for me. So I'm going to maybe try doing the world thing for like a year and see how that works out for me.
And can I just like emphasize on one thing that you just said right there? You said I was going off my emotions this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And that like your testimony, like this part that you're talking about kind of beautifully describes why we shouldn't purely just go off our emotions purely. Keyword Absolutely. Purely. Like emotions are good. Mm-hmm. They're like Lord uses them to like touch us and just work through them. Mm-hmm. But there has to be that guidance of the Holy Spirit to work through those emotions, because sometimes we feel rage, but just because we feel rage doesn't mean we have to act upon that rage every time,
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And so basically for like 6 months, I just started getting really heavy into drugs again. This time I was doing heavier stuff, like just going to college parties, doing everything bad. I ended up getting reconnected with my friends in Kansas City. They're like full-fledged, like dealing drugs, going to crazy festivals, like full out insanity. And I'm like, bro, I need to go be a part of this. And so I switched my degree to online. I moved out to Kansas City. I'm like helping them like sell all these drugs, like doing literally everything, cocaine, ecstasy, everything except for like meth and heroin and stuff like that. We were just doing everything, going hard, like totally just complete darkness. And I was sleeping on the floor every night with no mattress, literally just like bundling up with my dirty clothes, like
wow.
And I was just spending all my money. I got a job at like a little deli. I'm like spending all my money on drugs, just barely making it. Living this lifestyle for like a year and a half. Move in with this guy who's like really pushing a lot of drugs. He had like huge amounts like stashed in the attic. We're like not even legally supposed to be like living in this house. There's like no furniture in the house. We don't even have a doorknob on the front door. Like homeless people would like randomly walk in all the time. I'm like sleeping on the floor. Eventually I got like a booth that you have like a restaurant, and I was like sleeping on that for a while, and just completely just wrecked and constantly living in fear, anxiety, because we're robbing people are robbing our friends. We're like, I went from like 0 to 100, like literally just full darkness, constantly worrying about like, is someone gonna break in and try to rob us? Is the police gonna break in and like do a raid? Is like the car that I got a car from an auction for like $1,000, no title, no registration. I just put a random license plate on it from a random car, like completely bad. Always carrying like felony level drugs around to my job. I would drive like 40 minutes a day there, 40 minutes back, and like selling drugs out of my car at work, just complete stupidity. And a lot of my friends had started getting arrested, getting felonies. Things were getting really sketchy. I was starting to get worried for myself, like, like I'm going to get caught and my whole life's going to be over. And I am coming up on my 21st birthday, and hear on like a Facebook ad or something that Todd White is going to be preaching at the One Thing conference on my 21st birthday. And for some reason, I have no idea why, because I had no real like desire to even like go after the Lord. I wasn't thinking about God during this time, but something inside of me was like, I want to go to that for my 21st birthday. So I like got a bunch of my like druggy friends. I'm like, dude, let's go see this guy. He's kind of crazy. And deep down inside, I was like, if there's somebody that can convince me that God is real, it's gonna be this guy. So we go.
I'm pretty sure Todd can convince anybody that God is real.
Dude.
Yeah.
Just with his testimony.
Just with his testimony.
Yeah. And so we like sneak in because we didn't want to pay and like go up. We're like sitting in the back of the bleachers.
Low key, they just let you guys in. They're like, who sneaks into a conference for Christianity? Like, that's unheard of.
Yeah, and we were like getting high on the way there. We're like in the back, like watching Todd White, and immediately when we sit down, he just starts weeping, crying. He's like, I hate drugs. I hate what it does to people. I hate the demonic thing behind it. And all my friends are looking at me like, are we at the right place, dude? And I'm like, yeah, dude, just watch. I'm sure he'll say something cool, you know. And, you know, we're watching him for a while. I don't honestly even remember that much of what he said. We ended up leaving. And again, got that conviction of like, man, like, I feel like maybe I'm not doing something, like this isn't right. Like, I know it's not right. But then the enemy started using a new tactic on me of like, you're too far gone. Like, you had your chance. You grew up in church. You grew up around all this stuff. You had your chance to follow God. It's over. You rejected him over and over and over again. You know, you had all these encounters. You knew that they were real, and you turned away from God, and you're like, no, I don't want that. And this is your choice. You made it. God doesn't want you anymore. God is done with you. He can't even trust you. How, you've betrayed him so many times. How can he trust you that you're going to be faithful to him? Like, all these things are going through my mind. And I'm like, you're right. Like, I'm meant to be evil, I guess. Like, This is it.
Lies of the enemy.
And a couple of months go by, and it just gets heavier and heavier. Just this idea that, like, I blew it. Like, like I would have pictures of, like, the peace of just, like, being in the presence of God, of, like, being in church, being safe. And then I would, like, remember, like, my situation. I'm like, dude, my life sucks. Like, I'm stuck in this crap. Always anxious, always like in fear. I barely have food to eat. Like, I don't know. Like, dude,
what does that sound like from the Bible?
What's called the lost son,
the prodigal son.
Son.
Literally, like, his words were basically like that. Like, where am I? What have I done? Like, I'm
having food to eat. I'm eating from the pigsty. Come on, man.
Yeah, and the Lord, I really believe that he allowed me to go down this to really like break me and to show me that the world has nothing. And like when I made that decision in college, he's like, fine, go do the world and see what it is,
Yeah.
And this is where I ended up 2 years later. And one morning I go out onto my porch. I literally, nobody was home, nobody was around. I just started weeping, crying out. I was like, God, like, if you still want me, if you still care about me, if there's anything left for me, then just get me out of this situation. Like, I'm sick of this lifestyle. That's all I said. And I was like, whatever. God's probably not even real anyways, so I don't know why I'm doing this. Kind of go on with my day. A week later, this guy calls me, the director of the Sarasota House of Prayer, Roger Lee. He's like, hey, I heard you're living in Kansas City now. For the last week, I just have not been able to get you off my heart. I've been thinking about you. I've been praying about you, praying for you. I'm actually in Kansas City right now. Would you be able to meet up with me for coffee? And I'm dead serious. I did not even think about what I had prayed to God at all. I was thinking in my mind, dude, one of these Christian suckers, I'm going to get a free coffee out of him and then ditch, And so I go to the coffee shop. I had rehearsed this whole fake story of how great my life is, how I'm doing so good. I do the whole thing, tell him, and he's just quietly listening, he's like, yeah. And then as soon as I'm done, he's like, it's really crazy that you said that, because when I was praying for you, God was showing me that you were really in a lot of bondage, that you're stuck in like this really bad situation, that you have like this like a drug addiction, I think it was.
I think it was.
And like he's like, you're just really, really lost and really, really confused, and the enemy's just putting all these lies in your head about how God doesn't want you anymore and all this stuff. He's like telling me all this stuff. I'm like, what? And
you're starting to break down very quickly.
and he's like, yeah, and basically God, the whole reason why I called you here and invited you here is because God told me to offer you a way out of your situation. So if you want, you can, totally up to you, but you can come live with me in Sarasota. I'll get you established, restart, get you like basically a whole second chance at life. And I literally started breaking down, sobbing, crying. I was like, there is no way. And the coffee shop that we met at was right next to the prayer room. So I ran into the prayer room, ran to the front row. It's really funny because when I talked to him about the story, he's like, I don't know what was wrong with you, but like you literally just got up from the table and walked away without even giving me an answer. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I was just so in shock that I ran to the front. I'm like, God's real. I'm like, this is insane. And the level of brokenness that I had gone through for the last 2 years, it was like you're being lost at sea for like months, and you see like the rescue boat coming.
Wow.
And I was like, this is insane. Like I was so thankful for that God was going to give me that chance.
So Josiah, what's called? I know you have to leave at a certain time, so I want you to take a few minutes and just speak about this, about the situations you're going through, and just speak a message to the viewers, and just solidify it, and then close it off, and then we'll come back for part 2 of what God did after this later on. Okay?
Let's do it.
Yeah, this is a moment that we give to people to speak into the viewer's heart.
What do you have on your heart, just if for right now?
I would say on my heart what I have is exactly what I was going through, the lies of the enemy of that you've rejected God too many times, that you've blown it, that he doesn't care about you. All of that is just complete garbage, and God is so ready to accept anybody who has a heart to go after him. And I'm just so excited. I mean, another thing that I want to say is that the journey that you can have with the Lord, the amazing things that he has in store for each and every human that he's created, and the amazing things that he wants to do with you are so beyond what you can imagine. If you just submit your heart to him and say yes continually over and over, no matter how crazy, no matter how weird, like you're gonna look back and be like, that's why he told me to do that. And you're gonna like, the adventure that the Lord will take you on is the funnest, most amazing, most enjoyable life experience that you could ever have. And you'll see in the part 2 of the turnaround of being broken and just being like living in complete darkness and just like basically homeless to what the Lord has done in my life since then. And that's exactly it.
Probably gonna call it
your identity in Christ. Entering into intimacy with the Lord. I mean, that's the big theme of the second half of learning what intimacy is, learning that it's not about works, learning that it's actually that he died on the cross for you, not to gain anything out of you, not to get like this robot servant that wants to, that he was expecting anything out of you, but just because he enjoyed you and just because he loves you, because he actually wants to spend time with you, to be in a relationship with you. And even if you were the only person that would ever be saved, he would still die on the cross for you. Yeah.
And I just want to continue on with that, with saying that if you are in that situation where God is so far away, you feel like that God's so far away from your heart, he's so far and there's no way you can reach him, and the devil's put this trap or reminder that you are not good enough anymore, you've fallen too far away, you're so far gone, God's never going to forgive you, God's never going to take you back. And so you just keep hearing these things and you are stuck and you're looking for a way out. Right now you can just stop for a moment. You can just say, God, I need you to intervene. I need you to stop, and I need you to come into my life and do something that only you can do. I believe that saying those words out loud to God will be able to start something in the spiritual world that will be able to affect something into your physical world. Where you see what happened to Josiah when he just came outside, he just broke down in front of God. He said that he thought that, why am I doing this? God's not even real. But Roger instantly got put on his heart. Start praying for Josiah. Start going after Josiah, because there's something that needs to happen. And that's what God does. God instantly sees one person's pain and gives them victory through another person, because that's what the Holy Spirit is. He wants to love you. He wants to comfort you. He wants to take you into his arms, and he wants to hold you close as his dear child. So I want to encourage you guys, be blessed. Come back for part 2 next week. Josiah's part 2 will be even better than this part 1. I'm honestly believing it. So we'll see you guys next time.
See you
Have
next
a blessed
time,
day.
guys.
Goodbye.